Thank you. Thanks for the invitation to come here. So I'll just talk to you about the company Soapbox Labs to start with. We do children's speech recognition technologies. So 2017 and 2018 were like huge years for voice assistants across the world. It started, I think it was maybe 2015 when Amazon first released the Alexa into the US market, and it's taken a long time to get to this side of the ocean. And since then, we've seen newcomers come on, a bit more recent. We know that Google came on the heels of Alexa. Apple this year, Facebook are talking about a device by the end of this year. They've postponed it, but it still looks like it's coming out. And what's changed over the last couple of years is people are beginning to see the utility of voice assistants. A couple of years ago, speech recognition technologies were probably working on the 80% accuracy. So that meant they were still quite frustrating to work with. So people began just kind of doubted it would ever really take off. But myself, I've been working in this area for over 20 years, and it was kind of a case of once deep learning and vast volumes of data and GPUs and all that came together, we could see the scale of it and we could see the utility. I spent some time working on IBM a long time ago, IBM Research, and back in 2004, we actually saw a demo of the voice assistant. About how, the idea was somebody would be driving in their car and they'd want to go to a restaurant, and the car would ask them, the assistant would ask about what kind of restaurant did you want to go to, and give them real-time feedback on traffic and direct them to where they go. And it was 2003, I think, 2004. So, and when I was there and I was a research assistant at the time, I was like, that was imminent. This is what they were going to put in cars, and our understanding was a year or two, and it's actually taken this long to get real voice assistants of real utility. And what's happened there is accuracy. It's actually less frustrating. So if you tried it a few years ago, it was extremely frustrating. It got it wrong too often. That's all. It wasn't that it was getting wrong all the time, it was just too often that it was a frustrating experience. And that's what's changed in recent years. But it's not just the voice assistants, right? There's any number of these companies that are seriously doing speech recognition technologies, right? So I think TechCrunch, it was late 2016, said there was like 29 companies in the US alone doing speech recognition. So that's not counting Asia, it's not counting European companies, and it's not counting what's happened in 2018, right? That was a year and a half ago. But all these companies are doing spectacular things. So you're seeing voice assistants that, when we had them first, it was Siri and it was OK Google and it was on your personal device, but they've taken a leap from the personal device into the home. And that's really interesting from my perspective, what's happened there. It's something we all have to pay close attention to because it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, people think, wow, look at this amazing technology and what's going to do for it. But, to my mind, this is just the start. It'll be, even from our own experiences of the last couple of years, it'll be on your fridge, your TV, your car, it'll be in a vending machine. It's not just that it's a voice assistant. It's actually going to be the stage that speech technology, voice technology is going to replace keyboards, touch, swipe, gesture, all these things, because it's the natural interface. It's how humans communicate. So it only makes sense that if technology can do it to that stage, why are we all still typing and clicking? And we have to do that because the technology wasn't there to begin with. But what happens with that is when we actually start replacing interfaces and voice becomes the norm, you have to recognize the fact that you've put it in the home and children will use it. I mean, that's just a given. It's not about what you want, whatever. If you volunteer to take something and put it into the home, it will engage children because number one, it's fun. What child isn't going to try it the moment you do it? They're going to do it immediately after you. But it's also easier for them than clicking and typing because a lot of times they're even pre-literate or they struggle with dexterity. It's actually a great interface for children as well, and it's already there. So the question is, how do we handle it? What's the utility? So in every place that you could see an adult using speech technology, other than dictating your business documents, you're going to see that children will use it too, right? So especially when you take it outside the office environment, and you're going to see that they're using it. Other application areas we see for it in particular is, and what we started with actually, Soapbox Labs originally, our mission statement back in 2013 was more around education. So if you think about how a child learns to read, the most effective way a child learns to read is one-to-one oral guided reading, right? So that means a helpful adult working alongside a child. And if you ever watch a parent or a teacher teaching a child to read, they listen, they correct, they prompt, they encourage, and they assess, right? And it's that one-to-one, actually, it's a bit more than 10 minutes a day, but between 10 and 20 minutes a day is recommended for a child to get to, to accelerate their reading to a decent level. But in the world today, literacy levels have stagnated over the last 10 years. In the US, 60% of kids at age 8 are not reading at a proficient level. And a child that doesn't read at a proficient level at age 8, it's a key indicator of their future success. It's quite a key moment because it's when most kids stop learning to read and they start reading to learn. So if you are struggling before that, it's going to get harder and harder to catch up with your peers. So one of the ways when we've been looking at this over the years is that if you know the one way to increase their reading is one-to-one engagement, you're not suddenly going to find funding to stick more teachers into homes or suddenly free up parents' time or get private tutors. But what you can do is provide a scalable, cost-effective solution in speech technology that can actually act as that helpful adult, listening as the child reads the cat sat on the mat and correcting, prompting and assessing and do that personalised learning journey for them. And the same goes for English language learning or other language learning, depending on where you're from. The same thing, it's that guided oral reading. So personalised learning, personalised education is a huge area in the world today, but actually nobody has a solution really for reading. And they can do it for maths and science and geography, but they can't do it for reading. They can't do it from language learning. And the statistics about poor reading is actually masking a big, much worse problem for disadvantaged children and immigrant children, because those kids are actually 2 years behind their peers in studies, PISA studies. So they're the kids that actually probably would benefit the most from these type of technologies that are cost effective, they're scalable, and all they're required is a cheap Android device and a means to one of those devices. So that's one of the areas we're focused on. Another area that we've had a huge amount of inbound interest in is social robots, it's called, or robotics for fun, entertainment, get them to move around, but also social robots to engage children. Engage them in an educational way, or a lot of times kids with learning difficulties as well. But again, voice technology to have that meaningful interaction is really important. The more fun stuff like in VR, which also can be educational, but it also can be just pure entertainment, and then just pure gaming as well. Anywhere you see voice technology, like for adults, creeping in, the solutions for children as well make sense. So I'm just going to show you a quick video here, and this is one of the reasons why our focus in the last 5 years has been somewhat different. I'll just play this for you and you'll understand what I mean. So this is when you stick a voice assistant into the home and what can go wrong.
Alexa, play Digger Digger.
I can't find the song Too Good to Her.
Alexa,
play Free Shaw.
Let him do it.
Alexa, play Digger Digger. Alexa, play Digger Digger.
Bobby, can you tell it to play Wheels?
You want to hear a station for porn detected. Porno ringtone, hot chick, amateur girl, calling sexy.
No.
Pussy anal dildo ringtone.
Alexa, stop!
So it's a funny, cute video, right? But it actually indicates kind of more serious problems they have with when you put a device into the home. Where's the filter, right? You can say it's not designed for kids, it's not marketed for kids. I didn't put it there for kids, but kids are going to use it, and we have to face up to that, right? So some of the focus of our company over the last 5 years has been accuracy for children's voices, systems, environments that are fit for kids, and data privacy. So accuracy. Why is speech technology difficult for children? Most systems have been built with adult data, modeling adult behaviors, physical and otherwise. But children are physically different from adults. They're particularly in the vocal tract. They're thinner and shorter. So where men's voices might be lower, women's are overlapping but higher, and then let's say a tween teenager is kind of overlapping women. And as they get younger, the physical differences get further and further away from an adult, and that happens around age 12. And the younger you get, the more different it is. And that actually just physically causes confusion about what actually has been said. The behaviors, on the other hand, are just wildly different. Kids are wildly unpredictable. they stutter, they repeat, they shout, they whisper, they sing. They punctuate their words an awful lot more than their more fluent older siblings and other children and adults. And that actually is a real problem for endpoint detection, if anybody's ever worked on that. Because they don't just behave the same way. And what you end up doing is seeing that a system that has been designed for adults or using adult data or modeling adult behaviors is extremely frustrating for a child. And the younger the child, the more frustrating it is. Has a negative effect on brand in some ways because people associate that technology. A lot of people don't process the fact that it's just different voices, different. They just think the product isn't working very well. And I had a pain in my head from my youngest son asking me to, can you ask Alexa? When we got our first, for the first one. So what we've done is spend the last 5 years concentrating on, child-specific models. So what we did was look at data from children as young as 4. But the data was conversational, prompted, read, spontaneous, and built models that were very specific to young children. We spent time studying how children converse, how children speak to technology, the variance in that, and how do you cope with that, and how do you build a system specifically designed for children. We collected data in real-world environments, so that meant, where children are in their homes and their schools, and so you can actually understand that children don't. They don't use technology in a quiet lab-like environment. And if you build your speech technology on data that's been collected in a lab-like a quiet environment, it will only ever work in those environments. So to move away from that, you have to be able to, and get away from headset mics and get away from all that, and let children just be natural with how they want to interact with technology. And then it's more up to us to change our technology and then the child to change their behaviors, because you won't find a 5-year-old who's going to modify their behavior as much as an adult will. And that's how we've been getting away with a lot with voice technology and assistants, that we know that adults sometimes modify their behaviors to get a response. Children are less likely to do so. So another issue is the system fit for children? And are they appropriate? So 2 examples I can give you of this is that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the press secretary for Donald Trump, recently tweeted that her 3-year-old ordered a Batman on Amazon Alexa because child shouted at Batman at the device 3 times and suddenly got ordered. So, I call that somewhat into question that the UI works like that, but it kind of did flag up an issue. If a child uses a device that has access to purchasing power, why is that child able to do it? That's not appropriate behavior for a child interacting with a device in the home. Similarly, my daughter she's 8 now. She was using my phone and I had it locked, but she got onto the Siri thing. And she was just, sitting with me and using Siri to ask questions. Siri misunderstood and thought she said bitch. She didn't, but my daughter was shocked and showed me the phone with the word printed to screen. And Siri replied with there's no need for that, which is, very amusing and nice, but why didn't it recognize that was a child's voice and not print that to screen? So I think, when you consider the fact of the first video with the child potentially accessing inappropriate material, inappropriate lyrics, songs, purchasing power, inappropriate words, potentially accessing your contact list and doing video calling, whatever. What needs to happen is, and we've been working with clients to do, is to recognize at the point of the voice interaction, whether it's a child or whether it's an adult, and act appropriately. Route the child to a different environment, safe environment, and not to the wide web where they can do an open search and such things. And that's important when we put these devices in the homes and in the cars and in all the places that children will access them. So data privacy, the really thorny issue of data privacy. This is obviously such a hot topic in the last few weeks. But interestingly, the US are way ahead of Europe on this. Going back to 2012, the US COPPA laws explicitly stated that voice was personally identifiable information, much like video and images were, and therefore you needed to have explicit permission from the parents to collect data, right? And explicit is very explicit. It's like using a credit card to make a micro purchase, or having the parent put in their email address, email sent to the parent have to click consent, and then you have to remind them that they consented, and written in language that they can understand. It was very explicit and warranted, right? But with the advent of these voice assistants in the home, the FTC relaxed the rules only very recently and said, okay, we understand that these devices are in the home, so therefore, if it replaces, the voice replaces what would have been typed, it's okay to use it for only that purpose and as long as it's deleted immediately. So it's great. So that meant, in most people's minds, okay, we're good to use it in the home. But what it was not considering was a couple of issues is, what happens on the back end. You collect data from a child, is the data deleted immediately, which meant you need a gate for child or not child data. Is the data deleted immediately? Is there a data extractor for that? Is the data extractor used for other purposes? What's that data used for? So while we can somewhat say that we're addressing some of these issues, it has been very unclear to date exactly what data has been collected, exactly when the data has been deleted, and what's the data used for. And that is because it's an exploding area and the area is growing so quickly, it's often hard for the laws, and the FTC did really struggle with this and kind of came up very short on it, about what to do. What happens if you've given permission to your child to use the device and the data has been collected, but the child's friend visits the house? What happens to that data? Is that had been addressed? What if you just take the device out of the box and put it here? Is everybody being sure that the data is being deleted immediately? And that's really a thorny issue. So the FTC relaxed the rule. So a lot of people are now in grey water going, they think we're okay. We, the public, or who have put that device in the home are unsure when the data has been deleted exactly. The EU in the GDPR, the much feared GDPR in May 2018, have not relaxed the rule. That means that data is not allowed to be collected without explicit permission. So you take a device, you put it out, you put it in your home, you plug it in, a child uses it. Where's the responsibility? Is everybody immediately reacting, recognizing that a child has spoken versus an adult and reacting appropriately? So if people are the problem here is that because the FTC kind of took a bit of a back step and a blind eye for a couple of years, and then it got sorted out, the idea that the EU would do the same is a little bit less clear. One reason I would say that is because last year the Kayla doll was recalled from the market in Germany. And not just was it recalled, what came out was that parents should destroy this doll because the doll is listening to your children at all times and sending the voice data to a company that has links to the US military. Now that company was Nuance, which, it's a very reputable voice technology company around for a long time, and they have done DARPA projects. So technically it was correct, but the reaction from Germany was so polar opposite to what we've seen already in the FTC in the US that I think it should give us all pause to say, how are we doing this? Are we doing it appropriately? And I don't think they're going to see a blind eye. So in that case, somewhat we have to re-envision how people are using these technologies. And part of what we do is we have advised companies and we have solutions to help companies better comply with global data privacy regulations. So this is just on the company. I mean, we can chat more about it in a little while, but just on what's happened with the company. We started back in 2013. In 2018, we've raised a couple of rounds of funding from privately and from the EU as well. And we've got some great coverage from TechCrunch and Wired and the Next Web in recent months as well. So we were 10 at the end of the year. We're 13 as of from this month, and then we're scaling quite rapidly this year. So I can leave it there, and thank you for listening.
So, thank you, Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you for that overview. You talked a lot about your company, so I want to take a few minutes talking about you and your journey, so to share how you've gotten to where you've gotten to here. Phenomenal to hear the story, 2013, pure tech, built in Ireland, scaling company, so well done on that. But maybe give us a little bit of your background, the journey to date, right up to the start of Soapbox Labs.
Yeah, sure. So I qualified as a software engineer back in '97, some while ago. And I spent a couple of years working as a software engineer and worked a bit on signal processing. And then about 2000, I went back to college to do a PhD in speech recognition technology, which was it wasn't that it was new. I mean, we've been doing speech text since the 70s, probably. But it was so different what we do, how we do it now, and the volumes we do it with, and the approaches were so different, and the ambition was different. But I started in UCD, but I spent time out in New York, in Columbia University, but then also in IBM research in the York 10 Heights research facility. And then when I finished my PhD, I started in Bell Labs, which is now Nokia Bell Labs, and I spent 7 years there, kind of working on research, but then more and more as time went on into the commercialization of research innovations, and I was always kind of pushing for new technologies or new research we should do and new products we could bring to market. I was saying, in some ways, kind of pitching ideas and raising value propositions and trying to get resources and funding to fund projects within the organization. But by 2013, I'd identified a fairly significant gap, which was children's speech recognition, that I felt like I needed to invest time in and try and figure out what the problem was, and it was something I needed to do myself. So I quit Bell Labs too, and founded Soapbox Labs in 2013.
And was that an aha moment, or was this one of these kind of, you built up to see the problem and identified the gap? How exactly did you come across this specific problem?
It was all my experience up to that point led me to the aha moment, if you want, like that. I was working with my daughter, who was 3 at the time, she's now 8, downloading, some apps and web services, and kind of looking at, I think I was trying, phonics and getting her, reading apps and stuff like that, because, cute little maths apps, and then kind of looked at the phonics stuff and the reading stuff, and it was just, it was always multi-choice. Anything to do with reading and language learning was always multi-choice, because I kind of figured out, well, they've no way of assessing whether she could get this right or not. So she was, playing these beautiful games. They're all done, pedagogy was great in them and all that, but they had no way of assessing. And I remember asking her, she'd completed a level or whatever it was, and I was asking, you just finished that? And then I'd ask her what the sound was, what the word was. She'd go, I don't know. And I started watching what she was doing. She was just gaming them, because she got it wrong the first time. She just knew the next time around to do the other one. And she had no clue what they were, she didn't know what the sound was. She had no ability to recall. She wasn't able to read the sound or the word. And to my mind, that meant there was, why hasn't anybody done anything? Because, I'd been working on speech recognition for so long at that point, and I knew where we were going with adult speech recognition. The writing was on the wall that we'd be at this voice assistant stage. So it's just baffling to me that nobody had actually put any, not that they hadn't put effort in, they just hadn't got to the same stage, And it's why I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out what the problem was and why had nobody done that. So it was definitely my experience, coupled with sitting with my daughter and going, right there, and then realizing it was actually bigger than I thought, like the problem.
Okay. And in the last 5 years, you spent a lot of time working with some of the biggest names. So IBM, Bell Labs. You're now in a startup environment. What have you taken from that time in the corporate environment? So as many of us here we're working in big companies. We like to think we're a startup in many ways in Google. But what have you taken, and what are you applying in your current role today that you've learned in your corporate
So
time?
we're B2B. So we don't bring products to market ourselves. We license our technology. So it was one of my learnings, probably from my Bell Labs days, that it's such a big ecosystem. To possibly say I was going to do everything myself, every bit of funding I would have raised would have gone way too thin. And I realized that in order to develop the technology we needed, and I actually realized slowly over time how big a problem was and how difficult a problem it was, that the minute we started going to the end user, we started going B2C, we'd have to invest a huge amount of technology in that end of it as well. Funding actually and resources. So when we were in Bell Labs, we used to, one of the thinking was, and part of the corporate things, you don't have to do everything. You can partner, and you can actually just decide and laser focus on this problem and then find partners, because that's what big companies do, right? They partner, where it makes sense. But also what I learned also was that how to talk to corporates and to know what their problems were and their pain points, and realize actually sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So what we've discovered sometimes, we go into a big organization, get a contact in, talk to someone, they might not think they have a problem, realize they have a problem, or that person's just too busy, or they haven't put it as a priority. But you might actually talk to a different person in the organization, and it is their pain point. and they will talk to you and you start engaging. So I think sometimes people, you talk to a corporate, you get one, thanks, you're all right, and you think that's it, and you walk away. But realizing that very big corporations, it's just not possible to know what every part of the organisation is doing has served us well. And then realizing where in the organisation try and get contacts into, it's definitely relationship building over the last couple of years, and we kind of use a lot of our professional contacts over the last 20 years and to help get in to talk to the right people. That's important.
Okay. Any big surprises? I mean, from 2013 to today, I'm sure there's been lots of ups and downs on the journey. But what's kind of surprised you most that you weren't thinking before you took the leap into starting a company?
I was full sure at the start I'd have more competitors right now. But then at about 4 years into it, I went, oh, that's why, this is really bloody hard. Most people, will go fry bigger fish before they'll do this. But we've been very focused on niche area. But yeah, I think two things happened. I was surprised it took as long as it did for the voice assistants to take off.
Yeah.
But that's fair enough. There's always many factors for that. And then, in the child speech, I definitely think people are waking up to the fact that it's a problem today. Again, thought that would have happened earlier, but that's fine. We're in a great position at the moment.
Okay. Good problems or
yeah,
good surprises.
It's not a bad problem.
Yeah. In terms of yourself, your own time, so one of the things that we talk a lot about in Google is work-life balance, trying to figure out how you prioritize. I mean, you've got a lot on your plate. You've got the tech side, you've got the vision, you've got the business. How do you determine your priorities on a given week or a given month in terms of what you specifically are doing versus your team, given the opportunity from what you've described earlier on is just so big?
I wish I had said I know how I do that. I don't. We prioritize on the fly.
Yeah.
My job as CEO, and it just changes by the day. Honestly, I'll be booking the painter, and because we just moved into a new office, where I'll be, talking to legal or talking to accountancy or flying out to San Francisco or to New York, and every week is completely different, and it is just you're just constantly just weighing up stuff in your head. Dynamically, priorities, what you thought was a priority last week suddenly drops because something else just happened. But just having a good team and everybody, I think what helps priorities is always having the vision in mind. And one thing we've never changed is that the voice technology, getting the best possible platform that serves into our different verticals. That is a system that everybody can use, and we don't have to custom it for everybody. That all those things have been a focal point for us. So if we have a number of different clients and they're all looking for different things, we actually say no a lot. That helps. Not being afraid to say no, because just because you want it, if no other client wants it, that's probably not a priority for us. So we try and build something that's a useful product to as many people as possible, and then things like that. So always having that in mind when you're making your priority list for the week, or.
Okay. Pivoting into back into the business, you presented a whole lot of logos at the very, very start. Some of the biggest companies in the world, all in this space. Commercialization of voice technology. Where do you see 5-10 years going? What's your perspective on the revenue streams that are going to come out of these technologies for all these companies?
I think a lot of the conversation now is about winning the home. I think that's what's a driver for most people. They're not charging for it, but when you see what people are trying to do, I think, is to draw you into an ecosystem and have that ecosystem be as useful as possible to you. And that's where I think there's, it's not about the voice technology per se. It's about you using one device over another and paying for the hardware, or maybe you do your buying there, or maybe your services that you in this are like, who's giving you the best experience, and that's where you go. And what most of these bigger companies have realized is that I'm an Apple fan. I've got an iPhone. I've got a MacBook. I've got and I will probably get the HomePod if they ever fix Siri. Those type of things. So all those things I think make you. It's kind of like being a McDonald's lifer. That's why I kind of see where people are viewing the utility and the revenue streams. But that's not to say it's not going to change either. I think it's going to be a case if your product will look less for not having good voice technology as an interface. you look like antiquated technology if you don't have good. And that means it's going to be on, I mean, there's cars that are, partnering with some pretty big speech technology companies, to bring it, there's no way the Tesla's got pretty good, speech recognition technology going. You can't bring out a quality product now without it. Again, so over time it's going to just become more of the norm. And everything you sell them, majority of it will be done by voice.
And has that evolution changed your thinking on how Soapbox are approaching the market over the last 5 years? Things have moved very, very fast in the market. Have you had to pivot? Have you had to twist? Have you had to change? Or is your approach still the same?
We started using the word skills in the last year. I think that's changed. But it's literally an app on a voice device. But no, in some ways we always designed it to be an underlying technology that would serve into education, gaming. We always had the utility box there, which is, I think, at home advice when you talk about voice control, robotics, the AR, VR, all that, toys is a big one as well. What changed a lot for us is over the years that we start putting a stronger focus on data privacy and data protection and what that means. And we want to be sure that we were leading the field and that we know how it works. And we want to make sure that we can help other people be compliant. No, to my mind, it was knowing that was going to be a problem. You better hit those things head on early on.
Okay, and maybe getting a bit more specific on the offering. So sitting underneath Soapbox Labs, there's obviously some IP in terms of development. How have you gotten there in terms of really getting something unique and something different that's not available in the marketplace? So the ideas, the thoughts, the technologies, what exactly is under the hood?
As I kind of pointed a little bit in the talk, was about the data. I mean, we use state-of-the-art deep learning technologies. We have a team that's, I think we've over 8 years experience in the team in speech recognition technology. That's actually growing. I might have to add to that. We concentrated on quality data first. I recognized that problem after my experience in Bell Labs and actually it was Google back in the early 2000s that started a really clever data collection program. These Google 411 that you'd ring and ask for advice, and you get a free information call if you use voice technology back in the early 2000s, and it was actually a very effective way of collecting data. Google started a long time before anyone else. But my own experience, I worked on a number of different projects in the Bell Labs days where lab-like data versus real-world data, actually in IBM as well, was that you can collect all the data in the world and build a very efficient system, but if it's not representative of where you expect to use the voice technology, it won't work. And that's, all those learnings have led us to do things in a different order than other people were doing it. We were concentrating on quality data, understanding the problem, understanding the application areas, and then layering on state-of-the-art technology. And we're cloud-based API and making it available and all those things. So there's kind of multiple layers of expertise from the team and our own experience as well. People who came to the thing, how we do it, how we address behaviors. All that, there's as well as the thousands of hours of data that
Good to hear. Good to hear. A lot in there. Maybe open it up to the floor. Anybody? Any questions for Patricia?
Hi. Thanks for the talk. Very interesting. I was wondering if you could share some information about the effect that it has on children too, especially on their behavior, right? So with the products that are on the market now, it's very often that all that is needed is a command or an order, basically. So you say hey Google, do this, but you never say please or thank you or anything like that.
Yeah.
So what kind of impact does that have on the behavior of a child that they think that that's normal? And when they ask someone else to something else to someone else, are they gonna copy that behavior as well, or do they realize that they're not talking to technology?
It depends on the age of the child, I guess. As a parent, I would always advocate you say please regardless. So it comes from the parent. As much as the child could be rude to another human, I think you teach those behaviors in some ways. The fact that Alexa will do or Google Home will do it regardless. You know, maybe that's a little like, you know, a little add-on or a little like opt-in that you got to do. She won't do it unless you say please. Like, you know, I'll push that back in Google to address that issue. You know?
My question is about the product. Is it more like a classifier for kids' voice, or is it speech recognition including kids?
A classifier
For kids' voice, for instance, is you're trying to predict if this is kids speaking or children speaking, or is it more speech recognition including kids, trying to understand what they say?
We do both. So we recognize adult versus child as classification, and then it's also speech recognizer as well.
And for the classifier, how do you classify? What is the threshold for being a voice? Is it children's voice or adult voice?
So traditionally, you know, it's kind of a well-recognized problem that under the age of 12 is when you find the voice starting to differentiate the most. So that depends on the client, let's say, or you know, coming to us about what their specification is. What would they rather it happen? It's not going to be binary. It's not going to be black and white. So you're not going to be able to say, I have a cutoff at 13, because you're going to have some 11-year-olds that are going to speak like a 13-year-old, and 13-year-olds are going to speak like 11-year-olds. So you will have that a little grayer area there. But definitely, yeah, it's quite clear once you start going anyway younger, the difference.
Can I ask the accuracy
Of
the classification? Of saying this is kids' voice or not kids' voice, and for the age, for instance.
Well, I could share more information about it after, but it would very much depend on specific. I don't have all the. I think, like I say, if you're going to say, can I recognize a 4 or 5-year-old from an adult, I'll say 100% accuracy. If you're going to start saying, can I recognize a 12-year-old from an adult, that gets harder. So it depends on it's very easy to separate young children from adults. I'll say that for easily.
Thank you.
You mentioned you have an Alexa at home. Do you have any other voice assistants at home?
No, I don't. We have a Bixby and a Siri on home devices, though.
And is it purely out of a professional interest that you have it at home, or do you actually use it for queries?
Yeah, it was definitely bought as a research piece of equipment. I think I bought it from the US because I wanted to have it back in 2015 or 2016. And then I have access to a Google Home, so we've been testing that as well. We use it. Like we definitely use it like as a usual timers, alarms. Play music is a big one in our house. How do you spell this? What's general knowledge, just for fun sometimes. I think the utility can be better. I think we haven't quite seen it yet. I think it's quite limited, and sometimes on an Amazon, if you actually see it working in somewhere like the US or London, where you got Uber and you got your deliveries and you got all the way you got, call me an Uber. That's what I want to be able to do. We can't do that here in Ireland. So I think in Ireland we're somewhat limited because they only just released it for Ireland, and it depends on what it's connected to and what apps you enable. I think we're somewhat limited here. I've definitely seen better utility in the US.
And from your personal experience, which one do you find more accurate, the Alexa or the Google Home?
I would say Google in the natural language understanding, for sure. I would say you get way too many. I don't know what that means on Alexa, but I think that's an understood problem. I think, and then there's problems vice versa. I think both of them have their strengths. Depends what you're linked into. Depends on what you need as well. I think on accuracy, you never really hear one that's going to be that strong over the other. I think when it comes to kids' speech, I won't say. We've done our own empirical research on that.
Thank you.
You talk about speech recognition, of course, but have you ever, or is there a lot of focus also on the other side? So I mean, for me, it's really weird that we have this advanced speech recognition everywhere, but the system that asks you, especially in these IVRs and stuff, is very clunky still, like very robotic and very, if you want, blah, blah, plus this. So is there anything going on, especially for kids, on how this is served? Like, this is a fun assistant and he doesn't ask and answer in a way that you might expect, so more human-like, like maybe throwing a joke in or like presenting it in a different way. Or is this are these two separate fields, or is this the same companies
kind of like
are working on?
chatbot type thing with voice, is that what you mean?
Yeah, so the assistant being more of a person than just a piece of technical, I can relate to that person. He has some silly jokes and I program him with a personality, that kind of thing.
There's nothing really on the market that's blown us away, but we know there's a huge amount of companies looking at this. And not a huge amount of research done on it, actually. Funnily enough, we've looked and we've been asked about it recently, about that exactly. You know, that what would a voice assistant or a chatbot for child, you know, what makes more sense, because kids use different language, their concepts are simpler. You can't use a lot of what you would use for an adult with a child because they won't get it. It's not appropriate sometimes. Even the concepts can be just too much for them. Like, you know, they don't get the subtleties. And then again, it depends on the age group. You're talking about 4 to 7, or you're talking about 9 to 12. You know what I mean? There's a lot of, very little actually, very little has been done. But then again, if you think about the whole chatbot, that kind of automated assistant, that natural language understanding, it's still quite new for adults. We're only getting better at it now. And what I've seen is quite a lag on what will happen for kids. It will happen. We've seen a lot of people working on it.
Hi, thanks a lot for the presentation. Because of the nature of your company, I guess you have collected or access to a lot of data and voice samples of little kids. So if you could share, like, how do you approach gathering this data, collecting this, or buying this, getting access to it, and how do you make sure it is compliant with all of the privacy regulations that you just mentioned?
Yeah. So we just do it ourselves. We don't talk too much about how we do it, but from the get-go in 2013, we've been fully compliant with COPPA. I've made sure I was quite, because I started the company myself, like, you know, so I made sure I was engaged with, you know, privacy lawyers and understanding this, and more so understanding that we didn't really have an obligation to do it in the beginning, but, you know, it was one of those things I really thought was going to be an issue, and it should be an issue, and it should be addressed. So, you know, for a small company, I don't think it's worth taking risks on something like that. So we've done everything ourselves, and I'm glad about that as well, because, you know, it actually wasn't even possible to buy data, like, because, you know, there isn't anything equivalent out there, not in real world data, not kept on a mobile device, not on, you know, in a real environment, not in uncontrolled ways, and to my mind, everything else was useless, because, you know, again, like I said, if you get that, the only data you could buy was fairly lab-like environments, and, you know, controlled by an adult or a parent sitting there making a child read something. You know, that's not real world stuff. So we've been very careful to do it ourselves. We've been careful to be compliant globally, and to that end, that's a lot of value to us. Like, it means we can stand over what we've done.
Right, so that's a lot of effort, I guess, to gather this type of data.
Yeah, it was a huge part of the company. Yeah.
So one follow-up question then. Do you then take into consideration the to make sure you collect the samples from, you know, different countries, different cultures, just to avoid the cultural country bias?
Yeah, we've data from over 170 countries now, and, you know, tens of thousands, or actually more than that now. Yeah. That was huge as well, actually, to be honest, because one of my, you know, I lived in the US for quite a bit, lived around in different areas, and one of the things I always noted was, if you live in New York, or, you know, if you drop a pin on a school in New York, you're damn sure you're not going to get more than 20% New York accents, you know, so why just build a system with US accents, like, you know, and that was really key, that if a system's going to work everywhere, the world doesn't work like that anymore. You know, you've got such, you know, flow of people, whatever, and to be honest, like, deep learning and all those technologies, the advent of that has allowed us to be able to add multiple variations in pronunciation to the system, whereas, you know, when I started this back in 2000, you'd have, like, you know, Midwestern, you'd probably have a model from Midwestern US, and, you know, small British, like, you know, and even at that, you probably have to break it into different dialects and accents and stuff like that, because the systems couldn't cope with the variation, where we can now, which is amazing.
Hey, thank you for the talk, really interesting. I actually got interested in the topic because of Adweek and a talk about that as well, on the future of search. So it had a lot of similar implications in terms of what happens if a child is in the room, and also what does that mean for advertising in voice search. Do you have any take on the combination of advertising in voice search in the future and children being in the room? Because there's a lot of regulations and problems with that too.
Yeah, I think much like I said about the appropriateness, like, you know, I mean, that, you know, it's probably, you know, for advertisers, I think you don't want to waste time advertising to children, like, because they're not the buyers. So, you know, I mean, as much as you know, you ethically need to be able to make it an appropriate experience for a child, you also, you know, commercially shouldn't be wasting advertising dollars on advertising to a child. So I think, again, a simple adult-child classifiers for different age groups as well is appropriate. Even on apps now these days, there's quite strict regulations not regulations, more by guidelines as well about what you should advertise to children. So while some apps are free, you can slot in static ads, but it should be an ad on a Lego or Barbie, but it shouldn't be an ad on something inappropriate. And I think that's just, business sense really, as well as just, there's one side that's regulation is going to force us all to do these things correctly, and it's about time. But on the other side, there's definitely just good sense about it, as much as you target your ads to different demographics, same thing. Yeah.
Okay, one more question? I'll take the last one. Usually people will start running at 5 to get to their next meetings. I'm guessing a lot of people here will be doing that. We've talked a lot about the hard work to date, the problems you're solving, the things you're going after. Let's look at in 10 years. Your hope for Soapbox Labs, where you'll be, what you'll be doing. Yeah. Would you like to share, Anya, the future?
Yeah, initially, for the next few years anyway, we've got a big focus on multilingual. I think that's a huge thing. We can't just continue to expect, it's been such a hard slog to get anything quality out there in English, but we've learned so much. We've got our pipelines, we've got our processes. We can accelerate now adding languages. And that's what we raised EU funding for, actually. We raised quite considerable funding at the end of last year to take our platform multilingual. So that's going to be a massive, focus of the company. And eventually, there's lots of different variations of speech, all types of voice technology where voice comes into it, and it's kids. That's where we'll be. And we're already building up expertise in a number of different areas, doing more natural language understanding as well around children, things like that. We think, and we listen a lot to what our clients are saying to us and what they want to be able to bring to market. As much as we'll do certain amounts of it at the moment, but we're listening all the time to what they want, and without going into too much detail, we're responding to that. And right now we have a great position in the market because we have, quite a lead, because we focus solely on that. We haven't diversified over the last 5 years on kids. But there's so many opportunities globally. There's so many opportunities in this. We'll just keep building.
Yeah. Well, great space, great company. Thank you very much for taking the time, coming in to talk to us here, sharing, your journey, sharing the Soapbox Lab journey. Best wishes for the future.
Thank you.
I know pretty much everyone in this room is probably excited about where voice is going, where the technology is going, and it's great to see an Irish company, Indigenous company, doing real tech work here with an ambition to go global as well. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.